Welcome to part 4 on supporting communication skills in young children. Now we're going to look a lot more closely at how do we have those shared conversations. What does a back and forth conversation really look like, and what specific strategies you can use in your practicum experience to encourage that sustained conversation that really helps to develop oral language skills and communication skills. So children of all ages enjoy talking with their adults in their lives, including parents, teachers, and caregivers. Talking is one of the more natural things we do with children in our care, sometimes without even thinking about it. And when we talk about our day and we sit down to snack or lunch, we can help build important language skills through our conversations. We can do more intentionally to build children's oral language development. You can help children build language skills both through their own language interactions and by setting up an environment that gives children lots of reasons to talk and things to talk about. So that's something we haven't quite mentioned before, and I'm just now realizing I didn't add a slide in this presentation for this, but it's very important. The materials, how they're arranged, and how they're presented to children, when and how children are encouraged to use those materials can really enhance conversation. Taking those moments when an unexpected thing happens, especially outside. I still vividly remember the day that the preschoolers uncovered a whole nest of hibernating ladybugs on the playground under a pile of leaves. It was such an exciting moment. Well, everything had to stop. Our schedule stopped, everything stopped so that we could observe what was happening there. This was in early spring, so they were all groggy. I mean, again, we can use that kind of language. Look how groggy these ladybugs are. They're just waking up and warming up from their winter sleep. So the environment gives us stuff to talk about, and we've got to remember that we can take teachable moment opportunities like the ladybugs, or we can provoke an opportunity, as people in Reggio Emilia talk about this, having a provocation, using the materials and the environment to really get kids engaged and talking about some concept or some event or some social element. No matter how the conversation starts, it's that shared conversation that really it provides a crucial place for building these communication skills. So we're going to look at this a little more closely. Something that, so there is a tool out there called the CLASS tool. It's the Classroom Assessment Scoring tool, and it really does look at these interactions. And one of the things that the CLASS assessment does, you may or may not have been assessed on the CLASS, and you might be in the future because it's getting more and more popular, but one of the things it looks at is the quality of teacher-child interactions, and especially around this oral language development. And so I took these questions about this because one of the elements of the class really assesses this, and we want to make sure that our conversations with kids balance adult and child talk. So I don't know how many times I go into a classroom and I just see adults. If you close your eyes, you just hear adult speech, and you don't hear that balance of adult and child talk. So we want to see that happening. We want to practice that, giving kids time to talk. We want teachers intentionally modeling advanced and complex language, which we talked about in the previous parts of this tutorial, but we're going to look at that in more depth here in just a moment. Are there back and forth exchanges? So we want to really look at is there a give and take happening? Is there opportunity for the children to respond? And are they authentic? This is not a class description of this, but it's a word that I use. Do you have your teacher voice on? Or are you authentically you having a natural conversation with the child. That is what we're looking for. We want those natural conversations, just like you have with your best friend. Maybe a little more intentional because you're trying to draw out more language from them and get them to apply more complex language and vocabulary. But it still wants to feel natural and not forced, not like you're wearing a mask or have a different voice than you have with people in your family, but that you are authentically you, and kids will respond to that better. It's just like how you build trust with the people you care about in your personal life. They need to trust that you're you in your school life too. So here's some very specific strategies, and these are the things that I want you to be really looking for in your videos. So as you are commenting on each other's core groups, as you are completing the tutorial, these are the strategies I want you practicing in your practicum. I want you noticing in the videos. So we need to model listening skills, first of all. We need to have good eye contact with kids. We need to be on their level. We need to repeat back what we hear children saying and check in and make sure we've heard it correctly. These are all active listening skills. We need to act on, if they're using functional language with you, we might need to act on that. We might need to look more closely at what they're wanting to show us, or go with them when they say, hey, come over here and see this. So we're really going to pay attention and listen. We also want to, this is part of listening, right? We want to confirm, validate, acknowledge, and paraphrase what children say to us. Again, if they're showing us something, we want to paraphrase that. And maybe we do something that comes up in another slide where we repeat what they say and extend that with more complex vocabulary. We're acknowledging feelings, we're acknowledging accomplishments, we are noticing and talking about the things the children are doing. It's really validating for them, and it provides that language model that we are trying to do. Okay, so the questions you ask, of course, we talked about open-ended questioning before, but the questions you ask determine the level of oral language complexity that children will demonstrate in a conversation. So closed-ended questions are not going to elicit a whole lot of response. It might be a one-word thing. It might be a label of something like, what's that? What color is it? That's a very low-level kind of thinking or vocabulary development, or doesn't elicit children to use a lot of language to describe it. Whereas those open-ended questions ask children to think critically. They ask them to do those comparisons and contrasts, to evaluate things, to have, you need to develop your skills in asking follow-up questions to keep the conversation going, or comments, or other types of language to just keep those conversations going. So remember that the type of question we ask is really important. We need to provide wait time. I encourage people to count to 10 or 20 after you ask a question or you initiate a conversation with a child. It can feel like a long time, but kids need time to process what you've asked them. And if you're asking a more complex question, like an open-ended question, they need time to think about that and formulate a response. And sometimes we only ask questions in large group where there's multiple children competing to respond, and that doesn't do anybody any good. So make sure you give enough wait time. And sometimes that means patience with yourself so that they have enough time to formulate a response. Pausing and the use of silence can also be done intentionally in other ways. It can be used as a prompt for language. So you can say, you can do a pause like, once upon a time, there was not one, not two, but, and they can wait for the kids to say 3 pigs, or whatever it is that they're familiar with. Pausing can encourage the next part of the sentence. It can also stopping in the middle of a thought might get the kids to respond. So think about how you might use pausing or silence to get them to speak more. We want to use, again, those repetitions and extensions. So when a child says, so here's a great example, a child says, look at the big wheel, and then the adult says, wow, that Ferris wheel is gigantic. And so what we did was repeat what they said, but we extended it with higher level vocabulary, more specific vocabulary that then the child might repeat or not, but at least you're doing that exposure piece with repetition and extension. Prompting is similar to pausing, except you might prompt them to ask somebody something. Can I have a turn when you're done? Ask the child, can I have a turn when you're done? Or a prompt might be sort of an explanation of a process. So first, we are going to look at the menu, then we place an order. And so you're modeling that during dramatic playtime or something like that. So we might provide prompts that encourage children to use oral language. We develop that advanced vocabulary by also linking new words to familiar words. So in this example, a child might come to you and label all of the colors on their fancy tie-dyed shirt. And you respond by saying, you might use those words again, but you have a multicolored shirt, like a rainbow. A rainbow is multicolored. So you're going to use a new word to link the child to something they've already been using or something that's familiar to them. We do that with literature too. We make sure that we're including literature that does that. We want to repeat and extend, and I think I already did talk about that, didn't I? So I have 2 slides on this. Go figure. You get more for the money. Parallel talk and narration. This is how we link words not new words to familiar words, but this is how we link words to actions. So I talk about this as narrating what you see. So it might be your own actions, like I'm handing you some red construction paper and glue sticks so you can do this project. Or you're narrating what you see a child doing. Look, Susie, you are balancing 10 blocks in your tower. That's what we do. We just narrate what's in front of us because we're linking then oral language to something observable that the child can relate to. And then we want to promote peer conversations. So in peer conversations, we're really looking at how do we get children talking to each other? Do we give them enough space outside of our interaction where they can engage in conversation together? Do we set them up with peers? Do we do intentional pairings with them on certain things so that we promote that conversation? Do we model that for children by giving them the right prompts? Like maybe somebody says something to another child and that child doesn't respond. So we might need to prompt the child to respond. Hey, so-and-so's asking you a question. What do you think about that? So that we're doing everything we can to promote peers talking with each other. In the next